Frank Morano. I have for many years been fascinated by the death of Captain Thomas Mantell. Now, there is a great deal of mystery about what happened to this 25-year-old Air National Guard pilot. He died in the crash of his P-51 Mustang fighter plane near Kentucky. That's what we know. There's a lot of speculation about what happened in that airplane and what he saw. This has been discussed and debated since at least the 1950s. And now there's a lot of attention that's being paid to this story. And one of the people that has been trying to get the truth out about what happened to Captain Thomas Mantell happens to be his grandson, Terry Mantell. Terry, thanks so much for joining me on the radio. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Frank. I'm happy to be on.
So, Terry, what can you tell us about your grandfather, who obviously I presume you never got to meet, and his military record during World War II, for instance?
Sure. Yeah, in World War II, he actually flew on D-Day and flew a couple different missions. But on D-Day, he went on Normandy. He got hit not on a different mission. I think it was Operation Market Garden. He got hit. He was too tall. I'm 6'6". He was too tall to fly the fighter plane, so he flew one of the bigger, larger planes, and he actually had a glider that was attached to his plane. So on that certain day at a certain mission, he got hit with a lot of flak from German. And instead of abandoning and letting go of the glider, he continued on and hit his mark and made it back to England. And his plane was completely, if you saw the picture of the plane, I mean, I don't know how he made it back alive, but he got the Distinguished Flying Cross. He won other medals. So he was very, very well, a great pilot.
So he knew his way around an airplane and was not inexperienced by any stretch. Is he somebody that was considered reckless as a pilot? Was he somebody prone to, say, drinking or doing a lot of odd stunts in an airplane?
No, not at all. Not at all. He was very. Now I think he had that mentality of, a pilot in that day. I'm sure being 23 at that time, 24 years old, he felt pretty good about himself. I'm thinking, not his reputation. His nickname was called Shiny. I mean, everybody liked him. Very, very, very good pilot.
January 7th, 1948, in the incident that we're talking about, he dies. What was your family told about his death at the time?
Well, actually, there wasn't a whole lot said to our family. My grandmother actually found from a neighbor that the plane went down. And then there were stories that came out that said he was chasing Venus, that he was chasing a weather balloon. The weather balloon basically was the lasting story that was given. He was chasing a weather balloon.
So that's what what did the military, if anything, tell your family?
Military really didn't come out and say anything exactly. There was reports that was drawn up, and basically they said that he flew too high and passed out and chasing a weather balloon.
Well, why do you have reason to doubt that story?
Well, I mean, to give the background of the story, on January 7th, 1948, it was a typical January day, clear skies, blue, cold. There was all kind of calls coming in from around Kentucky to the police station saying that people saw something. Well, the police station got overflooded with these calls, and so they called Fort Knox, Godman Field, and said, "We're getting all these calls. Can you check it out?" Well, at that time, Thomas, my grandfather, was coming back from Marietta, Georgia, just on a practice run. He was in charge of a squadron. They was just doing a little practice mission. He was instructed to go check out something. He saw it, engaged, and this chase went on for like 20 to 30, 40 minutes. He was back and forth radio contact with Godman Field, saying it's huge, looks metallic, going in for a closer look. His wingman left him, and then actually he instructed his wingman to go to hot gun, which is a military term for let's load up the P-51s to be able to fire. And so they was actually on the ground getting equipped with weapons while he was chasing this thing. And so I think for him to be a pilot, I think he was just too good of a pilot. It's not like, to your point, it's not like he was a crop duster. He just, radioed in to a local station and said, "Hey, I'm seeing something. We chase it." He was instructed to do, and my dad was only 2.5 years old at the time.
Oh, so sad. I hate that your father had to grow up without his father in his life. That's just so sad. In 1956, 8 years after your grandfather's death, Air Force Captain Edward Rapalt, who was the first head of Project Blue Book, he wrote that this crash, the one involving your grandfather, was one of 3 classic UFO cases in 1948 that would help to define the UFO phenomenon in the public mind and would help convince some Air Force intelligence specialists that UFOs were a real physical phenomenon. I know you've done a fair amount of research into this, Terry. Do you believe that's accurate? Do you believe that statement from 1956 is accurate?
I think his story was definitely one of the top 3. It was interesting that 6 months from the day from Roswell was the day that Thomas died. And then if I just look back, and if we just look back as a society and see the technology that came out around that era and how fast it exploded on the scene, there was something really going on around the mid to late 40s, early 50s that I can't explain.
It's also been said by some historians that the incident involving your grandfather, it marked a tectonic shift in government and public perceptions about UFOs. Do you think that's true?
I believe so. I mean, I think it here recently, of course, it's exploded and it's been on the scene. It's a little more easier to talk about and actually not be. When I remember when I was little, without the internet, and I'll tell people a story, everybody thought I was crazy. So I think that the more that the government, we're having these hearings, we're having people come out and come forward, you're having more videos. I'm thinking it's way more mainstream now than it was back in the day.
What are you and your family looking to do now, and why are you pursuing this now? Unfortunately, your grandfather is still dead. Nothing that you do or the military says is going to bring him back. So what are you hoping to do right now?
Well, I just think that getting the story out there it's always been the family. We've always talked about it with the family. My dad, he had a hard time talking about it because he always got upset. But for me, ever since I was a little kid, this story is amazing. People need to know who Thomas Mantell is. Discovery Plus just dropped a show back in May. My brother and I did. That was huge. And then the Sun ran a story. I mean, my end game is, well, my brother's going to be working on a book. I'm in the market of a screenplay because I think if you look at his life, from being in love with my grandmother to fighting World War II to getting the Distinguished Flying Cross, to come back home and then to die the way he did at 25 is just, you don't have to add nothing to the story. Yeah. So I think his story getting out and just hopefully, I mean, my end game, I would love for somebody to give me a call from the government and said, okay, this is exactly what happened. Now, we did have contact with people that was in the tower at the time at Fort Knox, and he said, we saw it, and it was a saucer. And when that plane went down, he said the red tape came out everywhere, and everybody pretty much that was working there got dispersed across the U.S. and said that their pension was going to be taken away, and this was not to be talked about. So there was definitely a cover-up, and to get the truth, that's the end game at the end of the day.
We're talking with Terry Mantell, grandson of Captain Thomas Mantell, killed at the age of only 25, in all likelihood in pursuit of a flying saucer or some type of object. Terry, what is it that you think your grandfather was chasing? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. I think, when they came out and said it was Venus, I guarantee there's no way he was chasing Venus.
Venus, the planet Venus.
The planet. That was one of the theories. The weather balloon, I'm not sure. I think I've talked to people, and they said that they release weather balloons at air bases all the time. That's something he'd be familiar with. Whatever it was enough for him to put his life on the line, that he wanted to go to military hot guns, and that really I think he died doing something that he thinks he was protecting America from. Now, what was that? Of course, I don't know. For me to come out and say exactly what it is, I don't know what it is. I just know it was something that it was enough for a young stud, I would say, that knew how to fly, that was experienced World War II, that he put his life on the line, and he died.
Do you believe that the government knows more than they're letting on? Do you believe that the military knows the truth about what happened to your grandfather?
Oh yeah. I think the military definitely knows the truth, and I think the military definitely knows more than they let on, and that could be a reason because at the end of the day, you don't want to have mass hysteria, and for them to come out now, it seems like it's inching closer with all these hearings and the news coming out and like stuff like that. But I think, especially back in the day, if they would have came out and said, "Okay, this was a flying saucer," I mean, you could people would start freaking out. So I think the military, I think they know a lot more than what they're letting people know.
You know, you've been very public. You did the interview with the Sun, as you mentioned. You've done some other television. You're doing this program. Has there been any reaction, either privately to you and your family or publicly, from the military or or any government agency about what you've been saying and about your pursuit to get the truth?
There has not. There has not. That would be fantastic if we did get a call or somebody did show up and talk to us. But his mother, my great grandmother, to her dying day, she tried to find out what happened to Tommy.